Raider Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders Report, and we all know John Spytek Pete Carroll, they value the trenches, and I believe that it is very likely that the Silver and Black end up taking at least one offensive lineman in the 2025 NFL Draft. So coming up here on the show, I have all of the options that the Raiders could be looking at in each round of the 2025 Draft. Since the Raiders have 9 picks, and since we have a pick in every single round, you're going to see different draft prospects in all of the rounds here. So first, I want to talk about the Raiders' offensive line because I do think that this is a much better group than what they actually get credit for. I think that their front 5, and whether you wanted to have Jordan Meredith, whether you want to have Alex Kappa in there as a starter, Dylan Parham, we can all fight and bicker about what that starting 5 ends up looking like. But I do have a lot of confidence, at least, that we have 6 linemen that you could put out there at any given moment that could go out there and they could compete for you. So because of John Spytek, we are going to talk about some linemen that the Raiders could take at pick number 6 in round 1. And literally just Spytek literally the other day was like, y'all know how much I love offensive linemen, and anybody that watches the show is going to know how much I love Armand Membou. And he played right tackle the past 3 years, so you wouldn't really need to kick over Colton Miller compared to somebody like a Will Campbell. I believe that he has the highest upside out of any lineman in the draft who's ready to start day 1. There has been a lot of rumors about him potentially going to the New England Patriots in front of the Las Vegas Raiders, but this is a dude that loves to compete. I think he loves to embarrass people. He had a 90.4 overall PFF grade, and at 6'3", 314 pounds, the athletic ability that Membou gives you, and this is not a knock on DJ Glaze. This is me just simply going, can I improve on the offensive line? And that answer is yes. You add Membou to the offensive line of the Raiders, and you instantly have a top 10 unit, and I'm not kidding you when I say this. Raider fans would fall in love with Membou because it might not be a sexy pick, but neither was Colton Miller, and Colton Miller's been arguably the best first-round pick that we've had in many, many seasons. The other lineman that the Raiders could take, though, at pick number 6, and I would actually say there is a better chance that the Raiders take Will Campbell compared to Membou because he's got a top 30 visit, met with the Raiders at the NFL Combine, and he's got the height, the bulk, the athleticism to be a stud offensive tackle in the league. The problem is, though, he does have some T-Rex arms, which some teams could say that maybe they're just going to end up putting him as an offensive guard. Had a 72.2 overall PFF grade, but Spytek values athletic offensive linemen. Will Campbell, Armand Membou joined Tristan Wirfs and Trent Williams as the only lineman in NFL Combine history to be over 300 pounds, to have a 30-inch vertical, to also be able to run a sub-5 40-yard dash. When you're just that athletic and you're that big, it wouldn't shock me if a team that really values the trenches would try to bring in one of those 2 guys. Let's go to round 2 now, pick number 37. And again, you can go a multitude of different ways here in the draft. And I'm not saying that all these players are going to be available, but these would be the players that if they were on the board at 37, I would go, okay, these are going to be the guys that the Raiders have in mind. So for Josh Conerly Jr., he's an offensive tackle from Oregon. He had a formal combine meeting with the Raiders, and I like players that are coachable, and I like players that consistently get better. Also, the fact that he's got a little bit of a connection with JPJ, I don't think is ever a bad thing. But for an offensive line that does, man, like you got to get better and better and better, and you got to show that you're, coachable. And some people might point at little odds and ends of the NFL Combine. My favorite tape that I watched on Josh Conerly this past year, watch how he played against Abdul Carter. I can almost make an argument that probably the best tape that I saw in terms of an offensive lineman against an elite prospect was Conerly up against Abdul, and there was not many matchups that Carter lost. Carter lost that matchup. So when you can sit back and you can look at a lot of different things, if Conerly can win in that, I'm going, that guy can win in the NFL on a consistent basis. Let's go to another lineman here that I think could end up going round 1. I would be shocked if he falls to the second round, but Donovan Jackson has to be on this list. And he's got that coaching connection with Chip Kelly from Ohio State, allowed just 1 pressure in the CFP, but also, this is the bad part, he was cooked against Abdul Carter and went up against him, and Carter, put him into a blender a little bit, and sometimes that can just be matchup dependent. But I also know how much versatility matters in the NFL, and he played offensive tackle. He played offensive guard. And for somebody that values offensive lineman flexibility, if you have the opportunity to bring in a Donovan Jackson, maybe you can line him up at left guard. Maybe he could be somebody that you bring in and say, we're going to put you at left guard this season. If we don't give Colton Miller a contract extension, we're just going to put you at left tackle, which maybe not be the recipe for success that I would do, but I know that Donovan Jackson does have a connection with Chip Kelly. Let's go to another player here. It's offensive guard Tyler Booker, and I forget who was watching live that was talking about Tyler Booker, but this is a powerful, mean, and I mean it, tough mother effer. And when you talk to a lot of Bama coaches, a lot of the Bama coaches give him high praise for his leadership traits. Leadership traits, guys that rock a C on their chest, is going to be something that Pete Carroll and John Spytek look very, very closely to. I will admit, he is an average athlete, and that average athletic ability was on full display during the NFL Combine. But if you're somebody that goes, I value tape and what I see on tape more than the NFL Combine, you're going to like Tyler Booker. And I also think, though, you got to compare, combinations. If you put Booker on an offensive line next to Jackson Powers-Johnson and you let those two players learn together, I think that you could be looking at a dynamic duo, something like a Rodney Hudson and a Gabe Jackson, where you separate them, they might not be as good. And I'm not trying to take away from either of those players, but when you put them together, you're like, all right, this is a really good duo. Tyler Booker and JPJ would be like the Bash Brothers in the Mighty Ducks and a whole bunch of knuckle pucks, and they're going to be throwing some serious knuckle pucks out there. Let's go to round 3, pick number 68 here on this show. And for the third round, again, this is where you got to start looking at some connections. And Jonah Savaiinaea, the offensive lineman from Arizona, he worked with Brennan Carroll, Pete Carroll's son, the Raiders offensive line coach, run game coordinator from 2022 to 2023 with Arizona. He's got fantastic length, which Chugs loves, especially if you end up trying to move him to guard. And I could see a team try to push him into guard a little bit. Also a very durable 3-year starter with, I would say, average offensive tackle athletic traits. Like, if you're going to be an offensive tackle in the NFL, you got to have quicker feet, and I just don't think Savaiinaea has the quick feet that it's going to be needed to be able to win every single time you go out there at offensive tackle. You put him in, though, at offensive guard, and he's going to be able to give you a lot of good reps in there. At 6'4", 325 pounds, a 75.1 PFF grade, Jonah Savaiinaea, because of his connections to Brennan Carroll, I would say might be one of the most likely options in round 3. Though, if you told me, Mitch, who's the number 1 offensive lineman you want the Raiders to take in round 3, I'm going to go Tate Ratledge from Georgia. And this is just another one of those dudes where he's just a tough mother effer. And I want an offensive line when you're going up against them and you got to battle an offensive lineman for, 4 quarters, 17 games of a season. If you're battling Ratledge next to Jackson Powers-Johnson, even if the Raiders don't win a game, you're going to feel that. And, I go back to the stat last season, and it was like teams were winless following a game where they had to play the Detroit Lions. And essentially it was like the Detroit Lions beat the shit out of you so much that the following week your team's just really kind of banged up and you're just not able to go out there and be as physical and being as dominant as what you're looking to be. And that's what Ratledge is bringing to the table. A 3-year starting right guard, which, may be a player that I think you'd actually, and I always get cautious saying safe, but I really do think Tate Ratledge, just because of his mindset and just because of his body of work, does make him a safe prospect in this year's draft. Tough football mentality, and another player that gets a lot of traits of saying he's a great leader. And anytime I see a player that says, hey, this guy's a great leader, the Raiders, I know for a fact, are going to show love to that guy. Also, the tape shows that he's a good athlete. The Combine said he was an elite athlete. And I look at those elite athletic traits that I saw at the Combine. The tape for Georgia is a little bit, muddy from this past season, but 3-year starter at one of the best college football programs that there's been. That holds a lot of value to me. And Brock Bowers and Ratledge, I know for a fact, are really close. So this is going to be the pinned comment here on today's show. If the Raiders draft, only 1 offensive lineman, who do you want it to be? I want to know down below in the comments section. My answer is going to be after this YouTube ad break. So please let me know. If the Raiders draft only 1 lineman, who do you want it to be? Please let me know. To me, I do believe that the Raiders could potentially draft 2 offensive linemen this year, and you could see 1 tackle, you could see 1 interior offensive lineman. If it was up to me, I'm going to go Armand, Membou, and then there's another player that I don't want to spoil it yet, but I do think he offers a lot of value a little bit later on in the draft. Let's go to round 4 at pick 108 here, and at 108, you could go, again, a lot of different ways, and the reason why that I say that is because This is kind of where the draft, to me, I get a little bit worried about because the talent starts to fall off in round 5, round 6, round 7 very sharply. And Charles Grant, an offensive lineman from William and Mary, he had a top 30 visit with the Raiders and met with them at the Combine. He's got elite length with a 7-foot wingspan. His footwork and body control, plus his high school wrestling background, make him a really fun prospect. And for people that watch this show a lot, you'll probably know when I see offensive linemen that have a wrestling background, it is something that I always fall in love with, because if anybody that grew up around a wrestler, they just know how to handle their body, and they also know how to move you in ways that you didn't know was going to be possible. A 91.2 PFF grade. JPJ, guess what? He was also a high school wrestler. Let's go to Wyatt Milum, offensive lineman from West Virginia. And he was a 4-year starter with the Mountaineers, and he allowed 0 sacks since 2021, which is pretty damn good. Tough, smart, strong player, which is why he's a very good run blocker. He played left tackle for West Virginia. I don't really think that he's cut out to be an offensive tackle in the NFL. This is probably be somebody that I would try to move into left guard. But if you were saying, all right, let's draft Milum, let's put him at left guard, and then, again, you decide what you want to do with Colton Miller. Maybe you want to kick him out there. But 27 career penalties, 12 the last year. I would say his quickness, his first step, like when the jump back, it's slow. And I think he knows that he's a little slow, which is why the penalties kind of racked up there. But if you put him at guard, you're not going to be at much of a liability. Big player, 91.1 overall PFF grade. I like Wyatt Milum, somebody actually I thought could go in round 2. And because of some of these athletic, we'll call them malfunction deficiencies, that's probably the better word. Because of some of his athletic deficiencies, he's going to fall in the draft a little bit. Let's go to round 5 here at pick 143 for the Silver and Black. And again, when you're getting down here, you're going to look at some coaching connections. This player, though, is just somebody that was able to show that he was a reliable starter. And if I'm getting this late in the draft, that's what I want, some reliability. 4-year starter at LSU at right guard and left guard. Really good eyes and footwork, which I think help him always stay balanced. He's kind of got a little Dylan Parham in him where you can tell that he's a smart player and he sees the play happening, though doesn't really have some of the athletic traits that maybe you would look for in an offensive lineman. Really, really small hands, which maybe that's not that big of a deal to some people, but when you're trying to hit somebody in the chest and you're trying to move them, if you got a smaller hands, like it's not as easy to feel that pop. He does have an okay PFF grade of 70.3, a lot of game experience, and actually one of my buddies who I played high school baseball with, funny enough, was a coach for him in Camden, New Jersey, and told me that Miles Frazier is a player that I got to keep an eye on. So, Quay, I got you, man. Let's go to round 5, Jackson Slater, and this is somebody who I would say is a name to keep an eye on. The Raiders met with him at his pro day. He's a good athlete who, quote, held his own at the Senior Bowl from one of our sources here at Chat Sports. He's a good north and south mover. So if you're trying to block and you're trying to go north and south, he's going to be a great guy. If you're trying to create some screens or if you're trying to go a lot of zone blocking and you need some east and west movement, he's not going to be the dude because just doesn't move as well in that direction. He is a bigger boy, 6'3", 311 pounds. 9 games last season, 76.4 overall PFF grade. Jackson Slater in round 5 is absolutely a name to keep in mind because he's on the Raiders' radar. That I can promise you. So we still got to get to round 6. We got to get to round 7 here on the Raiders Report, and I appreciate each and every one of y'all that take time out of your day to subscribe. Also, if you enjoy this show, friendly reminder that we've already done a video on running backs in each round, cornerbacks in each round, wide receivers in each round, and all of those videos are going to be available to y'all down in the comments and down in the description of today's show. So just keep that in mind. If you enjoyed today's segment, we have also done a lot of different segments just like this. So coming up, some late round offensive linemen that the Las Vegas Raiders could potentially target, and this is kind of where I could see the Raiders taking another lineman. You got 3 picks in round 6 at 180, 213, 215, and then in round 7, you got one at 222. So if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed, make sure those notifications are turned on, and make sure that you guys tune in for us when we decide to go live for the entire 2025 NFL Draft. I also want to give a shout-out to, which I didn't realize this is what we were doing. I want to give a shout-out to our guy. His name is Josh I., and he was the sponsor of today's show. And I was talking to Josh, and I said, Josh, What exactly do you want me to talk about? And here's what Josh told me. Shout out to Felly IT personnel. We work on calls and make sure business, hospital dispatch, and government personnel networks stay up to date. Because if they break or go down, they're in chaos about it. And IT personals have to be on it in seconds because losing connection for dispatchers or police or hospital can be life-threatening. Josh I, shout out to you. He said, my passion is my job of IT and talking about the Raiders. That is what I am. People forget about IT work and how it gets done. Never gets attention from the important spots that keep emergency places up and operational because IT support is a 24/7 work ethic everywhere, especially for keeping dispatching services in service up. It's just that group. I want to say hey and thanks for sticking around. You guys are awesome. It's just a small field of work with emergency company that IT personnel never get the attention they see. So bottom line, Josh I was the MVP on a show. And I said, Josh, what do you want to give a shout out to? How do you want to do it? And it's basically he wants to give a shout out to all the people, all the IT guys out there. He also said, I was on deployment in Iraq, and I'm an IT personnel. We had to keep forward communication up to HQ. If that line ever went down, it was a bad time. I always worried about it, all that stuff. So I know that's a little bit different from what we typically do here, but what I really wanted to be able to start doing here on the Raiders Report is we have so many amazing people that show love to the show every single day from a lot of the OGs, from a David Zahn to Raider Ron to, a guy that I miss a lot, Trivan, to, Navman. Josh I's been a legend. Patrick B. We have all these people, Rebel Montana, that are always showing love to this show. If there's something that you do that you're passionate about, that you want me to just give a quick little love to, believe me when I tell you this, I'm more than happy to do it. Let's go to round 6 here for some of the prospects that the Raiders could potentially target in the 2025 NFL Draft. And again, going to go a few different names here. Probably one of my favorite offensive linemen late is Joshua Gray, lineman for Oregon State. And he's somebody where he was a team captain and a 5-year starter who has been described as a very tough, strong, and reliable offensive lineman. He's going to be good as a run blocker and as an offensive guard. Not going to really rely on him, though, as an offensive tackle. And I say that because there are some people that have him listed as offensive tackle. The problem is his feet. His feet are way too heavy for pass protection, though he did get better and better and better, which I'll give him some credit in that. But at 6'5", 300, got to add a little bit of weight. And because he needs to add a little bit of extra weight in there, I would probably just say, let's put some weight on him, because I'm worried if you add weight and his feet stay clunky, it's not going to be a great recipe for success. So Joshua Gray is the guy in round 6, which now means we're going to go to round 7 here for our offensive line targets. And Chugs told me that he was going to give me a fun name, and I don't know when the fun name's going to pop up. Very, very end? All right, cool. First one I'm going to bring up here is Caleb Rogers, and Rogers had a top 30 visit with the Las Vegas Raiders. He was a team captain at Texas Tech, played over 4,200 snaps in college, left tackle, left guard, and in right tackle. Definitely a little bit of a limited athlete, which his upside is capped. And you can definitely see that on tape. But if you're in the 7th round and you're just looking for I'll call him a Thayer Munford replacement. If you want a Thayer Munford replacement, I think Caleb Rogers is a good name to keep in mind. The another name here, we're going to go with Caleb Etienne. Etienne met with the Raiders at the Big 12 Pro Day. He's got elite size, length, but his technique is really bad. And the guy that I would compare Caleb Etienne to is a Dalton Wagner, where you look at Wagner and you're like, that guy is a mammoth of a human being. How isn't he better of an offensive lineman? It's because his technique isn't too solid. So because of that, Caleb Etienne is somebody to definitely look at. The final name I'm going to throw up here is Jalen Travis, and there's been a lot of hype around Travis coming here to the Chat Sports Studio. 6'7", 340 pounds, 12 games played last season, allowed only 1 sack out of Iowa State. The fact that this name's been getting a lot of buzz in the Chat Sports circles tells me that there's probably some other NFL teams, but also if you're the Raiders and you've been scouting Jaden Higgins, you've been scouting Jalen Noel, and I know they've been scouting Jalen Noel, that means you've also come across the name of Jalen Travis. First 4 years he played at Princeton, so you know he's really smart. That's interesting. All right, Jalen Travis. I dig it, Chugs. All right, so we're getting ready to hop on out here again. I hope that all y'all decide to tune in to the Raiders Report when we decide to go live for the NFL Draft. Last year, we were live for almost 21 hours. We had almost 300,000 people join us. I was actually doing a lot of meetings today around some of our draft content that we're going to be providing. It's going to be a packed week, and I can't wait to break it all down for you. And if you want to see the picks before you see them on TV, you better be subscribed here to the Raiders Report.